Perhaps the most requested AR-15 review we get is of a company called PWS, or Primary Weapons Systems. But the thing is, it's not really an AR-15. In many ways, it's closer to an AK than it is an AR, which begs the question, what the hell kind of AK, AR, voodoo witchcraft is PWS producing?
Reliability is often a bit of a cliched argument. In my humble opinion, take it for what it's worth, a rifle needs to be as reliable as the task that you expect it to perform, which most of us is worst case scenario, getting through a training course or a range day where you shoot a couple hundred rounds. And yet, whether you love or hate the AK, one thing we should all be able to agree on is the fact that the AK has legendary reliability. And one of the things we can also probably agree on is that the ergonomics of the AR do make it a more appealing platform, which would mean that if we're being reasonable, we could agree that if we could combine the ergonomics of an AR with the reliability of an AK, that would kind of be the best of both worlds. Enter PWS. Now, on a short stroke gas piston system, the piston is not directly attached to the bolt carrier group. So you will pick up a little bit more recoil because the piston is moving a little bit, but not the full length that the BCG is cycling inside of the weapon. Very famous guns use short stroke piston systems. We have the FN, FAL, we have the SCAR, we have a lot of AR variants with the HK416, LWRC, SIG MCX, go down the list. Fucking trucker. But that's not what PWS is. PWS operates on a long stroke piston system. And there's some very famous weapons that use long stroke pistons. We have the M1 Garand, the FNC, we have the Bren light machine gun, very famous firearms. With a long stroke piston, the piston is directly attached to the bolt carrier group. So with each round fired, the piston is traveling the entire length that that BCG is running. So you do get more reciprocating mass, so you do get a little bit more recoil, but the benefits would be that you get ultra reliability and you get a weapon that runs much cleaner, especially when being run suppressed. And that's all fine and dandy. So how does it actually shoot? Okay guys, let's get into the PWS. Real quick, basics. If you need real estate help, let us know. Behind the scenes, the 1911 Syndicate serves your real estate needs, minus the really stupid ones, which we cannot help you with, because no one can help you with that. It's Correct. Not just us. Beyond that, we've got Patreon. Ammo for the review provided for by US Brass House, 1911 Syndicate, all lowercase, no spaces, 20 bucks off a case, saves you some cash on your ammo. Beyond that, we will start getting into this. So the relationship with PWS. PWS did send in the rifle for the review. The rifle is not mine. I can buy it or send it back to whatever I want with it after this. Maybe not whatever I want, but you get the idea. Beyond that, haven't had a lot of communication with PWS. Thank you to Kisa from Salt Lake Wholesale for being my PWS mentor. She's like a PWS armor and sponsored shooter.
Oh, really?
Locally, yeah.
Oh, cool.
So she really helped me on some of the sort of gunsmithing and kind of specific things, because as we will cover, while this looks like an AR, it is not indeed an AR. It is this weird, unique thing that is its own animal. So let's get into a little bit. So let's start with this. Why PWS? Because I try to look at guns and go, okay, it's more than just the sum of like, how's the trigger and the safety and all that kind of stuff. Like, why? Why does this exist? Tell me your story, right? Like, we try to tell stories of firearms. So the original notion behind this gun for me was as a cold weather gun. The original plan was we were going to be shooting all this content that you're watching now up in Montana in a as we were told, point blank, me and Buster over here, the coldest place in the continental U.S. that has a mayor, which is a very specific bragging right. Very, very specific, humble brag there.
That's hilarious.
So because of the cold weather stuff that we're doing, we really wanted to feature some guns that would be kind of uniquely suited for cold weather environments. And I thought, look, with the AK being, which is a long stroke piston, being so legendary in like the Soviet bloc and in many parts of the world. Yeah. Like, it's an interesting notion to take this sort of AR-AK hybrid and let's dump it into some cold environments and let's see how it does. Because the truth is, in case you're like, how relevant is this? First of all, I would really recommend go watch the Grand Thumb video that he did on cold weather testing a gun. I don't know if you saw that recently.
Yeah.
Probably his favorite video of mine favorite video of his that I've had in quite a while. I really enjoyed it because we've kind of been working along a similar track. We just haven't launched, content kind of in the way that he did it. But the AKs performed the best. And to a point that he proved in that, which I've also had personally living in Utah and having guns and vehicles overnight, I have had DI guns freeze up, straight up, where the bolt would not cycle because the oil dried up and it was too cold for the gun to run. So it's just like, hey, a straight up, my Radian froze up. Okay. It's not a fault of the gun. I'm not shitting on Radian. Fantastic gun, love that thing. But it's like, that gun completely shut down on me in the cold because it was in a vehicle overnight and the next day it was not running. So it is a real thing depending on what kind of environment you live in. Now, PWS, and we're gonna kind of go into this a little bit, does work heavily inside professional environments. They actually build way more like oriented at being a combat tool than a recreational sporting rifle.
Yeah.
It's really not meant to be a sporting rifle. And we'll kind of get into it a little bit, okay? So inside of the law enforcement community, right? So think about some of the considerations. So patrol rifles setting in vehicles overnight, right? In, Minneapolis or wherever the hell, place that we're talking about,
Detroit.
Right? It's like they're not being well maintained. They're setting in vehicles, they're getting dried up. So hey, look, any advantage that we can have when that thing does get called into use would be pretty important. So long stroke piston starts to make some sense. For SWAT teams, most of their engagements are very short range, right? Like it's inside of a structure. I mean, that's most of what SWAT is going to be doing. I found this fascinating. The first 223 gun from PWS was actually, they still make it today. It's a 7 3/4 inch AR. So very short, very, very short. And it was designed really to work as a short range SWAT gun. And there are SWAT units that use them because I had those conversations with, some of the motherships. So, of course, it's an interesting point because you're like, well, 5.56 out of a sub 8-inch barrel. I can't imagine that the ballistics are going to be very effective, but I guess again, it's a matter of like good enough. I guess that's probably what it comes down to. Seems a little counterintuitive given the length, but hey, is what it is. Those guns also, right? Think about SWAT in particular. Heavily, borderline, damn near full-time being run suppressed.
Yeah.
Right? So with the long stroke piston, one, the gun's gonna run a lot cleaner. So the gun will run a lot cleaner because it's gonna bleed off a lot of that carbon and gas and stuff that would be blowing back in your bulk carrier group. So not only is the gun gonna run cleaner, but it's gonna take less parts wear, which is going to increase the longevity of the rifles, which any department in their right mind's like, yes, longevity of gear is good. We have a budget and we don't need to be going to buy new guns every 6 months because we burned them out from shooting them with cans on. So just some of the reasons in terms of PWS being run by a lot of professionals.
Are you having a hard time holding it? You may be suffering from irritable control syndrome. Introducing LTT Advanced Shooter Care. Say goodbye to the shame and embarrassment of poor handling, and say hello to comfort and control with Talon grips and laser stippling. You may experience extreme comfort, control, and range domination. If total control lasts more than 4 hours, don't call a doctor. That's totally normal. Enjoy it. Experience LTT Advanced Shooter Care, and don't let irritable control syndrome control your range time.
Another point to this is the fact that a lot of the PWSs are exported to countries that I'm not going to go into because I didn't, I'm not trying to disclose stuff that's set in confidentiality.
It's not our lane.
They are exported to countries and units where it's like, hey, because of their environment, they're seeking an AR-based weapon that runs on a long-stroke piston system for that reliability, right? So it's like, look, this is a very purpose-built thing, and there's going to be some kind of cool stuff that we will go into. There's a few variants here, okay? So PWS has a Mod 1 and a Mod 2. This is the Mod 2, and you can model some of the stuff that I'm about to talk about. So the Mod 2 is fully ambidextrous, okay? So
are your
the lower's completely ambi. I know some people will be like, well, it's not completely ambi because it doesn't have the bolt lock that you can do from your, fucking who cares, man? Relax.
From a lefty saying it's completely ambi?
Yeah, I don't care. Like,
shut the fuck up.
Yeah, like, it's good. For my people, and I would know, it's good to go, okay? So ambidextrous has a flared mag well. That is actually nice, and, you know, does it transform your reloads? No, but it does help. No forward assist on this, okay, which is, of course, a hot thing to be debated. You guys can have that debate. I'm not. Okay, so we got no forward assist. It is an overall lighter weight gun, okay, and we'll talk about that with the handguard. So it has this pick lock handguard, right? And I'll kind of go into a couple of things that are kind of interesting on that in a moment. But pick lock handguard, we'll go into that more in a moment. Price on these is $2,050, okay? And we will circle back to that. The Mod 1, which is not what we have, that is the popular law enforcement model, so it's more of a duty use gun, non-ambi, does have a forward assist, and it's an all M-lock handguard. Price on those is $1,600. So if you're like, I don't need the ambi shit, I don't care about being lighter weight, I just want a good gun, all the internals are the same on the Mod 1 versus the Mod 2. You're just sacrificing some of the cooler guy stuff.
Features.
But you save $450. So it's like, hey, if $450 is gonna matter to you, then Mod 1 is your answer. They've got a few different barrel lengths. So they got a 16, they got a 14.5, they've got, this is very interesting, an 11.85, which I find so fascinating because it's like, well, there's 10.5, there's 11.5. They're like, nope, 11.85. Okay, I don't have any beef with it. I just find it fascinating.
Did they give you a reason on that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there is, but I don't know what it is. So it probably has something to do with some of the internals that, like, that's the longest that it could, the shortest it could go without redesigning some of the stuff. Would be purely a guess.
Yeah.
Okay, purely
speculation, people, relax.
And then they have the 7.75 inch, and that one's very interesting because I would never buy that because I have no use for it, but apparently there are some SWAT units that do carry those. 3-position adjustable gas block. You can see it, we'll show you some B-roll of it as well, that's right on the top there. It has a very easy adjustment, so you can put in anything that will fit in the hole, right? So
and that's what she said.
If it fits in the hole, then it's good to go. And so a round, if you just take a 223 round, it'll go in there and you just crank it. It's very, very simple. So it has 3 positions. To my surprise, even running it suppressed, I've left it on position 1, which is actually the most gas.
Yes.
Which is surprising to me because you would think, okay, position 1 is like normal, and then position 2 you would go to for suppressed, and position 3, I don't know what you would use for, but with maybe like full power ammo, because I've really been using range ammo in this, but for like full power ammo suppressed, maybe you would go to 2 to back off the gas a little, but position 1 has actually been perfect.
Cool.
So there you go.
The third position, from my understanding, has to do with cleaning it. Like if you want to clean the inside where the op rod or the long stroke piston sits, it has to do with that, if I remember correctly. Okay?
Kisa seemed to, if my note was correct, say that ammo is a big determining factor in terms of what setting you were going to leave it at. But just know, hey, with a can, running suppressed, not the best ammo. That's where it's been.
Cool.
So, so let's talk about the handguard because it's very fascinating. I'm going to tell you guys something that like I did not know was a thing until I was told. I'm like, we actually all had to scratch our heads and figure it out together. So you've got M-lock on the 3, 6, and 9, right? So on these 3 sides, right? Obviously pick rail that runs the full length of the gun.
That's a 12.
Yeah. So the offsets that are going to be on either side here, including the bottom, non-functional. It's just a shaved weight and create some ventilation for the barrel, right, to cool off and all that kind of stuff. So non-functional offsets, which doesn't bother me. I know there's 7-side M-lock handguards and everything. Totally cool. I'm down with that too. I'm just saying that the lack of the M-lockable offsets does not bother me. So up here on the 3, 6, and 9, you're going to have the Picatinny, right? Making this a pick lock, right? As in a combination of Picatinny and M-lock. So for anyone that this is new, that's what we call pick lock rail. You'll see that the Picatinny on the bottom there runs a little further out than it does on the 3 and the 6. But here's what's the most interesting thing about this. So PWS has a patent. Me and Kisa are talking on the phone, and we're like, and I asked her, I'm like, so what the hell are the holes? what are these holes that are in the M-LOK? Because I'm like, they have to be functional.
On the Picatinny.
Yeah,
In the middle
I'm
of the
sorry.
Picatinny sections.
Yeah, there's these holes, and I'm like, so what is it? They've got to be functional, because it's not like that would shave enough weight in order to matter. And so she sent PWS message, came back. So I find this fascinating. So what it is direct attach M-LOK slots. So take so like for example, flip this over to this side. So like this Arasaka
light
mount that is over here, essentially if I backed this out and I took off the nuts from the back of the M-LOK attachment, these screws would screw directly into here without the use of a nut, and then it's locked in. So you can use your M-LOK attachments on a pick rail and not even have to deal with the most painful part of M-LOK, which is the stupid little nut. You gotta hold it there with a screwdriver while you tighten it down until it catches. I'm like, that's a brilliant little patent that they got there. I'm like, that is super cool. Does it like change the world? No, but it's like, it's innovative. It's
like
cool.
it.
I think it's neat. Without the use of a nut, I'm shooting blanks. Okay, let's go through kit list on the gun just so we can answer that for people. So start with Sling, that's from Sly Tactical. You've heard us talk about them plenty. And thank you for those of you who do use our promo code. Shameless plug, 1911 Syndicate, all lowercase, no spaces. It's like 15% off, but basically always run Sly Tac slings now. We have a Collis K18i 1-8 on a spur mount. Then we've got up top here, we've got a mod light. This is an OKW, the mini one, with a Surefire tail cap, and then the mod button that you're running back here.
They did with Unity.
Yeah, just magpole, foregrip.
Nope, BCM.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah, it's BCM.
Oh, my bad. And then CGS Helios QD that is direct threaded on. And we will talk a bit about that. So this, and to answer your question, yes, this is a heavy setup, very heavy setup actually, because I mean the optic is a heavy optic, the can's a heavy can, like added up, yes, it's a heavy setup, but this is meant to be more of a longer range AR. I don't want to use the term recce because there's much debate on what the fuck a recce rifle really is, but something that's more so in that category. To go through some pros and cons. Well, let's start with this. So you've had a PWS for a while.
About 6 years.
So?
Yeah. So Good Gun limited edition run that they did, they only made 6 of them. It's actually, this is how badass Megan is. That was my wedding present.
That's a dope wedding present.
Dude, is she not the coolest?
Dope wedding present.
Yeah. So they made 6 of these ones that I had, and I mean, that's the rifle I ran at the Haley course we met at.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh. So I ran the piss out of that gun and ended up breaking apart, which is okay. Just, you know, parts break, guys, it's okay. It was part of their piston system, the op rod.
Okay.
Broke at the bottom of it, okay? So fast forward like 2 or 3 months later with SHOT Show, I was there, went to the PWS booth and said like, hey, I just got this rifle, you know. Unfortunately, I broke this part and I got, you know, I had several thousand rounds at that point. And they're like, oh, hey, here's our customer service, here's our number. Stacy Nagy, he was the VP at the time. He's like, Stacy's like, here's my phone number, please call me, I'll get you a new one. Dude, cool. Sent it right out.
That's cool.
So about 2 weeks after that, still at SHOT Show, I was like, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm gonna be in Boise with my wife. Can we swing by your manufacturing facility? And I didn't work in the gun industry at this time, okay? And they're like, we don't usually do that, but we'll tell you what, bring that cool limited edition rifle, because only one of their employees got one. The other ones went out to customers. Yeah. They're like, bring that, we'll fix it, and we'll give you a tour. Dude, called them that day. They opened the doors, and for 4 hours, gave me and Megan a tour. They gave me $400 in free swag, hats, coffee mugs, battle flags, all this cool stuff. Damn. They took us to their gun room that is like, I mean, super cool. Awesome. Yeah, anything you can imagine. Yeah. And really, I mean, from then on, I've been a fan just because the customer service, the reliability. Now, again, I did break a part, but when you run your guns, you break parts. Shit happens. It's part of it, guys. Yeah. And it's just, I haven't really shot it much since then. Yeah. I need to get back into shooting it, but I've liked their rifles for quite a long time. Yeah, cool. So. Now, please don't everyone go email PWS for tours. They're gonna be that like, was a one-off. These stupid Syndicate guys. One-off guys. Seriously, like they did not have to do that, and you know, very thankful they did. It was very cool. The bonus of that too, little sidebar. Afterwards, Megan's like, you know, I know why guns are so expensive now. And I'm like, well, why is that? And she's like, did you see the 40 machines it takes to build one gun? And I was like, yes, I did. And she's like, I don't care really about gun prices anymore, and it's been the best thing ever.
The best thing ever. Take your woman to a gun tour, and she'll start to understand it.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna get some of my pros and cons, because I really, I've actually tried to put a lot into this video and really kind of learning how the thing works, and like I've enjoyed making this. So some pros and cons, and it doesn't matter if a gun comes to us from a manufacturer or not. It's more awkward when we have to say bad things. It's very awkward actually, because we still have to communicate, but we will still say them. So I'm gonna give you my honest assessment of this thing. The first thing that everyone is going to bitch and complain about is they're going to be like proprietary parts.
Yeah.
It's going to be the argument. Okay, cool. So let's go down the rabbit hole for a second, because this is almost the epitome of a gun with proprietary parts. Okay?
Correct.
So the bolt carrier group, proprietary. The bolt itself, gas block attachment. The rail. This one will probably shock a few people, but look, if you burn out your barrel, which you probably will not, but if you burn out your barrel, that is that you cannot drop in another barrel.
Now got to send it in.
That has to go in for a service request for PWS to change out your barrel.
Yep.
So really when it comes to the upper, the whole damn thing's proprietary.
Yep.
Okay? The lower, not so much. It is a just standard AR, M4, whatever you want to call it, lower. Okay? So here would be my counter argument to people going, not interested, tons of proprietary parts. Okay, cool. I hear you. Respect your opinion. I've got two things that I would come back to you with. One, buy replacement parts if you're that concerned about it.
That's what I do with night stuff.
Largely problem solved,
Yep.
right? And if you're really that paranoid, buy a complete second upper to, over time, strip down if you really had to.
Yeah.
The only time that would be relevant is if a company you believe might go under one day.
Yeah.
It's the only time it's relevant.
Correct.
Right? Is if you're like, well, I'm concerned this company might not be here. Cool, so let's go down that path. So if you look at really proprietary shit, one thing that you want to buy it, but you're concerned, well, what if the company's not here 5 years from now? Cool. What kind of professional contracts do they have? Because that is going to largely determine the long-term health of that company.
For the most part.
For the most part,
Yeah.
right? But let's just leave PWS out of it for a second. Let's just use Knight's armament, right? So if we go, so you got a Knight's and it's got some proprietary shit with the bolt and yada, 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 right? Okay, cool. So you think Knight's is going under anytime soon?
I would not imagine.
No time soon,
No.
right? Because they have so much business from professional end users, like they're gonna be around. PWS, I'm sure, has less contracts than Knights. I mean, who doesn't? But point being, it's like they have a lot of professional users that they service. To my point, I'm like, that makes me very confident that the company's going to be around, because
Longevity.
there's a lot of door kickers using this shit. So it's like, I think they're going to be around. So the proprietary thing to me does not hold up in this case.
Yeah.
If you go, hey, we have a startup company, tons of proprietary shit, I'm a little nervous, because I do not know if that company will survive. Statistically, they will not. So I'm a little nervous. I don't know that I'm going to go down that path with you, right? But on this, it's like, I don't think they're going anywhere, right? Man, I think they're going to be around for a long time. So other cons. Let's go down the cons list. The muzzle device is not suppressor compatible.
Yeah, it's
okay?
their 3-port.
Yeah, it's their thing, right? So it's not suppressor compatible. So if you're gonna run a 14.5, right, it would be advised, get a separate upper and lower, like a complete gun.
Buy them separately.
Buy them separately, and then pin and weld whatever muzzle device you want on the gun to be able to attach a suppressor.
Yep.
If you're like, I live in California, I'm never gonna run suppressed, then who gives a shit? Just buy the complete
16,
gun.
yeah.
If it's legal, which is probably not. Or buy a 16. If you're like, you've got two options, right? 14.5, separate upper and lower, pin and weld whatever you want. Or just buy a 16 that's not pin and weld, and that way you can swap to whatever you want.
Yeah.
If you're not running suppressed, who cares? It's a non-issue. But I would say that I think it would be cool if they would license the technology of like dead air, for example, and be like, hey, let's make our muzzle device, but make it chemo compatible. That way we can run popular cans on it. That's what I would like to see.
Or if you could like somewhat custom build the rifle and be like, hey,
Pick
pin
the
and
muzzle
weld the
device.
dead air muzzle.
Pick the muzzle device. You know, like there's companies that'll do that. Be like, hey, look, this is what comes stock. If you want to change it out, let us know, and it's $50 for an upcharge. I would be cool with that. Other con would be the trigger. It's really just an enhanced mil-spec trigger.
Correct.
Nothing fancy. It's just, it's essentially like a cleaned up mil-spec trigger.
Is it MP3 coded or anything?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it's just an MP3 coded mil-spec trigger. Probably wrong on that, so you guys go get all mad if you
Go ahead
want.
and get mad.
But so on a gun that's a couple of G's, I would like to see a better trigger. At the same time, I think that the gun is probably underpriced. I think the only reason it is $20.50 is because there's like, hey, there might be some shit that you want to change because I would love to run this trigger. You love Geisley SSAs. So it's like, hey, let's just price it $150 cheaper and put whatever trigger in you want.
Yeah.
And yet the end consumer still sees 2050 with a mil spec trigger and they're like, I wish it was better.
Yeah.
So cool, valid argument. I get you.
It's a good point.
Let's talk pros. Hands down, and it was apparent to me the first round that I put through this in its current configuration, the best sounding 5.56 rifle I've ever heard. So
I remember when you called me and told me that.
And I was like, dude, I'm almost struggling to understand this. This is, on a full-length gun with a can on it, the best 5.56 rifle that I've heard. And I think that there's two things that work there. One, the long stroke piston system, getting rid of some of that port noise from the end user. We talked to Mike Pappas about this in terms of why would a piston gun sound more quiet to us versus a DI gun of the same length. And it would appear that the piston bleeds off some of that port noise that's going to be coming back to the shooter's ear. So at the muzzle, it would still have the same volume, or decibels, whatever, but at the shooter's ear, it will be a bit more quiet. So I think that the long stroke piston, bit of a theory here, but I think the long stroke piston is accounting for some of that drop in decibels combined with a bitchin' suppressor in the CGS Helios QD that's also direct threaded on. And I think that the direct thread combined with the suppressor itself is accounting for some of that.
Yep.
But legitimately, guys, it won't probably it doesn't translate on camera, but most of the time that I've shot this, I've shot it with no ears on.
Which is so nice.
Comfortably.
Yep.
Like where I'm like, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm honestly good. I should put on ears and I do to be responsible to my hearing, but like this is the best sounding 5.56 gun I've heard. Big pro there. Second one, very nicely gassed. So even with a can on it, with the maximum gas setting, it is really not gassy. So it's very, very nicely gassed, and especially given that this is on maximum, shit, I could almost make a case for like this. I almost wish this was the medium setting so that I had one more for adverse conditions, kind of like a SIG MCX or something like that. But it's very nicely gassed. It runs very clean. So the nature of the system is it does run clean. For those of us that don't clean our guns like we are supposed to, that's a nice perk. So it is a very clean system. I think for most of us, we would all agree that's a pro. The recoil is not what you would expect from a long stroke piston. So given that the bolt carrier or the piston is attached to the bolt carrier group, so every time you fire around this entire system,
it's a little awkward, but the op rod with the charging handle, the bolt, it all goes in a motion
that is
like this.
Yes, correct. Right. So this is mechanics, guys. This is mechanics, okay?
Stranger.
So yes. So with that reciprocating mash, you would think that this would have a lot heavier recoil than it does. It is barely more noticeable than a standard DI AR. It really is not. I will say this, a SIG MCX is noticeably snappier than this, like by a long shot. And I'm not shitting on the MCX. I like the MCX.
We like the MCX.
But it's a very heavy, same with like a 416 or something like that. And those are short stroke pistons. So you would think long stroke, that's even more mass that's moving around. And somehow this recoils way softer than either of those platforms. So for those of you who are like, I bet it recoils like a bitch, you know,
nope.
It really doesn't, guys. Next thing, excellent Ambi Controls. So we already mentioned that it has them, but I'm just, as a lefty who uses them, they're very nicely done. The main one that I use is the Ambidextrous Mag Release, which is gonna be right here by the trigger guard. So basically, as soon as you come off the trigger, you can drop that mag, and it's very, very nice, very intuitive. They knocked it out of the park on the Ambi Controls, okay? Comes with great furniture. This is a big pro to me. So it comes with a Radian Raptor charging handle, very nice. With a Radian Talon, the Ambi safety. It also comes with a BCM grip and a BCM stock. That's nice furniture.
All parts that I enjoy.
Nice furniture.
And again, for the price point, that is badass.
It's great because let's just go ahead and talk about price. I think that it's underpriced. That's just my 2 cents. I think that that's probably a $2,500 gun that you're paying $2,050 for, in which case the trigger thing being that, because I will
slap a new trigger in there, and you're good to go.
And you're good to go, and you're at 2250. So I think that the gun is actually underpriced. That's my personal opinion. The lower, even though the upper is still proprietary, the lower is not. So if you wanted to just buy the upper, slap it on your lower, no problem. You can do that, right? Especially if you had a lower that was like SBR'd or something like that, and you wanted to buy like the 1185, and cool, like no problem. Like you can still do that. Handguard is not nearly as thick as you would think. So like, remember like, you didn't shoot the MCX Virtus that I had. It was the 11.5.
No.
So
I've played with them. It's a beefy handguard.
Beefy handguard. Yep. Again, I like the gun. I would totally buy one of those. Same thing, 416, beefy handguard. So this, even more shit going on underneath here, and yet that handguard's basically the same size as a standard AR handguard. Like a little beefier, but
I mean, I can still touch my fingers.
Yeah.
Holding
negligible.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's not that beefy of a handguard. And for a gun that has so much in the way of, piston and all that kind of stuff going on, not nearly as heavy as you would think. Heavy right now, but that's largely because of how it's kitted out.
Yeah.
The raw weight of the gun is really not that bad. So with the pros and cons done, let's take you to some final thoughts.
A good gauge of where I stand on a firearm is this. Would I, after reviewing it, buy it? And the PWS is a resounding yes. I will buy this gun. You will see this gun in future videos. I find it to be a fascinating rifle. In an era where the internet will always ask, what makes it different than any other AR-15? Oftentimes, it's not different. It's just another nice AR, and you should buy it if you like it. But the answer here is simple. It's not an AR-15. It's the love child of AR and AK. It may be the perfect answer for those of you who are tempted by the dark side, but can't quite leave your AR world. The PWS, it's a winner, and it's an early entry for Best Surprise Gun of 2022.
So, with that pros and cons list done, let's take you to some, damn it, the final line.